why. And we also need to make sure that every member of Congress posts their expenses, their office expenditures, on their official website. Did you know that we have members of Congress in our own delegation that refuse to really explain where or reveal where they're spending their money and how they're spending it? That needs to be on every single member's individual website. When you go to their website, when you look at their website, their official website, clicking on the link that says how that money's spent so that we know exactly where it is. We need single subject legislation in the United States Congress. If a bill is going to be about football, it can't be about baseball. One subject alone. And I will also introduce legislation that says "Niet to czars." The U.S. Constitution makes it very clear. The U.S. Constitution makes it very clear. If you are going to put somebody in a position of power, like the czars, they need to be confirmed by the United States Senate. Let's get back to the Constitution. We also need a law in place that requires that any law that applies to you and I applies to members of Congress as well. And this election is also going to be about getting the economy back on track, making sure that we're creating jobs in this country. So we've created a list in our 2010 plan of ideas that we will build to once again create jobs, get this country back on track, because it is not the government that creates jobs in this nation. It is the private sector that creates jobs in this country. It's the men and women in this room who go out and invest and put their own lives at risk, their own fortunes at risk, to make sure that they're creating jobs in the private sector. Government does not create the kind of jobs this country needs in order to move forward. So the first idea that we have to create jobs is creating American energy zones. This idea really comes from and modeled sort of after the healthy forests idea, where if you streamline permitting, then you can actually start getting some good work done. And in this country, when you have layer upon layer upon layer of bureaucracy and government that says, no, you can't do this without this study or that permit or this validation, we need to make sure that we are allowing people to develop energy resources, whether it's nuclear, whether it's clean coal, whether it's natural gas, whether it's solar or wind, to develop that energy without interference from government. And so we'll create American energy zones where the permits are streamlined and people can get to work today instead of waiting for 10 years to get a permit, waiting 10 years for litigation. They can actually start creating jobs. We also need to embrace an all-of-the-above energy policy. If we are going to continue to drive this economy forward, if we are going to continue to pursue energy independence in this nation, then every drop, every watt of energy that we can extract is going to be necessary. And that comes in all forms, from wind, solar, natural gas, coal, nuclear, hydropower. We must have it all in this country. And we can start, too, getting this country back on track by reducing taxes, eliminating capital gains, reducing capital gains, and making sure that we are competitive with foreign nations in terms of their corporate tax structure. I've shared with you the story before from conversations I have had with business owners around the state in this country who will call me one day and say, look, business is going great, but my number one competitor just moved to Ireland to take advantage of their corporate tax rates. And he's left with a choice. He's left with a choice to either go overseas himself or reduce the workforce or reduce wages to try to compete with his competitor who just was able to gain tremendous benefits by moving overseas because of a corporate tax rate that's unfair when you're talking about leaving the United States and going to Ireland or other countries. And so here's an opportunity in this nation to once again get jobs created by saying, you know what, we're not going to penalize people for doing jobs, for creating jobs in this country. We're actually going to make sure that we're competing with our nationwide competitor, our worldwide competitors, to reduce our tax rates to bring them in line so that we can actually create jobs here. And we also need to make sure that we are once again creating free markets around the world so that we can export our goods on a level playing field and making sure that our export markets are open to U.S. goods on a level playing field. Healthcare solutions. Let's talk healthcare. Remember when President Obama said over and over again that if you liked your current healthcare coverage, you'd be able to keep it? Yes. The first draft regulation of the administration already proves that that is not true. They are going to make changes to policies within the first 3 years. It is estimated that 51% of employees' policies will be modified by their employers because of regulations put on by the new health care bill. Remember when President Obama made a promise that he wouldn't increase taxes on people who earned less than $250,000? The first tax increase of the health care bill goes into effect on July 1st. Just a couple of weeks. July 1st, raising $2.7 billion. we can actually get this country back on track when it comes to healthcare solutions with a few common sense ideas. They don't involve government, but they involve government getting out of the way. Number one, we need to allow people to buy health insurance across state lines. If you can go onto eBay and you can buy a car across state lines, why can't we buy an insurance policy that best meets our needs by allowing us to buy that insurance across state lines? We need to make sure that we allow association health plans in this country to go forward. I've told you about our implement dealership in Yuma. We employ about 18 people. The implement dealership right next door to us employs about 20 to 25 people. Why can't we join together under one policy to bring down the cost of our health insurance and increase the health care quality for our employees? We also need to make sure that we're freeing states in ways that they can deliver their own health care systems. The founders created states, thought that the states would be laboratories of democracy. And so what better way to make sure that we're achieving real healthcare solutions by allowing states to reach their own solutions without being tied, their hands being tied by the federal government. And we have got to reform medical malpractice so the trial lawyers in this country aren't enriching themselves at the expense of every single one of us. And we also need to make sure that we're taking advantage of new technologies. I've introduced legislation in 2006 and passed legislation in 2006 dealing with telehealth and telemedicine legislation. And it allows people to be reimbursed through Medicaid for telemedicine and telehealth visits. The idea is very simple. It's based on a private hospital study in Grand Junction, Colorado. This hospital, Centura Health in Grand Junction, had a group of patients where they actually provided them with all of the necessary equipment for telemedicine, telehealth machines. The telehealth machine had an internet connection. It had a video screen on it where you could actually visit the doctor, had the oximeter or blood pressure gauge so that you could visit the doctor over the internet. Over the course of this study, the hospital spent about $150,000 to provide this equipment and perform the necessary work. As a result of the study, though, between 70 and 90% of the patients in this group never went to the hospital once. Reduced their hospital visits between 70 and 90%. It reduced the overall visits to the emergency room amongst this group of patients by 100%. And the hospital saved nearly $1 million. That is a private solution that we need to adopt in the public sector to make sure that we are, number one, increasing healthcare, number two, decreasing cost. And if they can do it, so can government, and we ought to be making sure that we are looking for every opportunity to embrace those private sector solutions that work in the real world and make them work in the government world as well. And so those are just a few of the ideas that I wanted to share with you today. It's a little bit different than the kind of conversations that we've had in the past. But I also wanted to leave some time for questions and just thank you for being here this morning.
There's one thing that I think politicians should stress a little more, and that's that if you tax the wealthy, who's going to invest in jobs and create jobs? It isn't the poor that invest and create jobs, it's the wealthy. Well, the people with more money, and that never comes across.
Yeah, I think one of the important things that we as Republicans stand for is the ability to get government out of the way and out of our pockets so that every man, woman, and child in this country has more of what they earned left in their pockets so that they can make that decision to spend it for themselves. And when we reduce the burden of government, when we reduce the tax burden, and we reduce the fees that have been put in place by the state government, giving people the power to do what they want to with their own money, then we'll be a more vibrant economy for it, and we'll also create more jobs than we ever thought possible.
Sure.
I'm not sure you could give an off-the-cuff answer to this, but it's